So that's when I say I was walking through the woods and the Lord's like, I gave you exactly what you wanted. I found myself still in an executive role, probably in a higher role, making the same amount of money for doing way less work. And but I'm like, Lord, this isn't how it was supposed to go. I was supposed to go out on top, not humiliated and embarrassed. I mean, my confidence was, I attribute it to like a plant, right? Being pruned. I felt like I was that plant that was cut down to like you barely could see it above the soil. It was the most humiliating, embarrassing season. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it showed me how misaligned my priorities were.
Okay, welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the Pay It Forward podcast. I am one of your hosts, Austin Siewert, along with my co-host, Keegan Walls. And today we are sitting down with Josh Kasinskas.
Nope. So close.
I missed it by that much.
Kasinskas.
You got it.
Let's do it again.
I love it.
Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the Pay It Forward podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Austin Siewert, along with my co-host, Keegan Walls. And today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Josh Kasinskas.
There it is. Word of the day. Kasinskas.
Yep. Round two. Got it. Josh is the former co-owner of Graphic Systems Corporation, which was started by his father. They were a $30 million in revenue company with 80 employees. He is currently the founder of Holy Ground Ministries, a Buju action coach, business coach. He's a Christian, husband, father, and Bowhunter. Shot a massive deer last year, 2 years ago.
Last year. Almost a year ago.
Yep. So the goal of the podcast today is for you guys to take a look and really evaluate your priorities in life. Josh certainly had to do that, and I think you'll hear that through his story of being in the family business and transitioning out of that. So we hope that you can learn from it and that his story inspires you to do the same. So thanks for being here, Josh.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, tell us more what you're doing right now, your ministry, your business coaching, just kind of high level so people can know what you're doing.
So two things. Yeah, we have a ministry called Holy Ground Ministries, as well as I'm a business coach. And really the business coaching is an extension of our ministry. So Holy Ground Ministries is really what the name says. It's about seeing land and regions become holy. If you think of the story of Moses and the burning bush, the Lord encounters Moses at the burning bush. He says, take off your shoes, for the ground you're standing in is holy. So what is holy ground? Holy ground is where we as Christians are because we carry the presence of Jesus with us. So it's really about encouraging people in their sphere of influence. You think of media, schools, business. They talk about the 7 mountains. So you have a sphere of influence. What can you do to reclaim ground as holy? So being a real estate agent, being a pastor, being a teacher, you have these spheres of influence. So that's really what the ministry is about empowering you to take that role seriously, to see things that are going on in the culture, in our schools, these kind of new age things going on, people using litter boxes in the schools and all that we as Christians need to take our authority in Christ, hold positions of government, business, and really kind of push back the darkness in our homes and in our communities. But it really starts with us. And the business coaching is really the role that I play in the world, and my sphere of influence is the Lord's gifted me in the area of business. So that's my opportunity, is to play a role with business leaders to speak into their life and help them run great businesses, but ultimately with the goal of them encountering Jesus, who is everything. Business is just the vehicle to get to where we want to go in life. That is our mission field. So encouraging people, whether they realize it's their mission field now or pray that one day they realize the opportunity that they have in the business. Holy Ground also, we're developing a retreat center. We're in the process of that right now. We have 2 cabins, and we do pastor respite retreats as well. So no charge for them. We want them to come away, get charged, be with Jesus so that they can go shepherd the flock. There's a lot going on in the American church right now, and we need healthy churches and healthy pastors. So we're trying to play a small role in that.
Yeah, amazing. And you guys are doing that in Gaze Mills. Have a beautiful property over in the
booming metropolis of Gaze Mills.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard of it.
Though. Absolutely gorgeous area, and monster bucks. So that is the place to be for both of those. So
that's initially what got me there was the deer hunting, and then fell in love, and the Lord called us there and told us to make it home. So
well, we'll talk about the deer story later. It's a good one that
Can't wait.
I definitely want to talk about. Keegan's just on the edge of his seat.
He was asking me all sorts of questions at the time. He's like, so tell me about the shot. What gear were you using? He's real
what kind of equipment, what brand,
right?
Explain hunting.
Well, tell us more about what it was like growing up in the family business. That's something that a lot of people can relate to. Having parents that started a business and kids are going to be taking it over, or they're thinking about selling and kids aren't taking it over. But like growing up in the family business, what was that like?
Yeah. So my dad actually started the business in 1989 when my mom was pregnant with me. Out of necessity, he actually lost his job and had no other options. So he set out and said, what can I do to start a business, to use his skills? And so really growing up, we were very poor, didn't have a lot, but pretty quickly on, so we were in the software industry. So anybody that makes a table like this equipment, for example, mechanisms equipment, our customers would design that. So it's called computer-aided design software, and known in aerospace, automotive, but really it's become more mainstream. But at the time it wasn't. So really picked a good time, built a great business from nothing, bootstrapped it from nothing. But I really didn't know what he did. I had no intention of joining his business. In the software industry, we call it seats, obviously, because I think you're sitting at a chair in front of a computer, so they call it seats of software. So they'd say, what does your dad do? Oh, he sells seats of software or something. I don't really know. So really never had a passion for it, and he was gone a lot. He missed a lot of time with us. He was traveling. He was building a business, doing what he needed to. And at the time, that's just the life that we knew, that my mom kind of raised us, and he was there the best that he could, but trying to grow and scale a business is extremely difficult. So I think based on not being a technical person myself, as well as just not really having that connection with my father, didn't really have any interest in the business. At age 10, I actually became a fisherman, first mate on a charter boat in Lake Michigan. And so that was my career choice. I'm going to be a professional fisherman. So at 18, I got my captain's license.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So you can call me Captain Josh.
Yeah.
Should have put that in there. Shoot.
That'll be the title.
Yeah, Captain Josh. CPT. So that was my career choice, and that was around the time the economy was crashing, and fishing was terrible too. So I called my dad and said, hey, Dad, I might need a real job, and decided to get married at a young age. And so just said, hey, I'd love to have a job if you'd give me one. So I got a job at inside sales, and, cold calling, knew nothing about sales, knew nothing about engineering. If you know anything about the engineering world, they use acronyms for everything, and they use acronyms to describe acronyms. And I'm like, I have no idea what this stuff is. But really, it was when they said, everything that we touch has been manufactured. So think about something that you love, and then think about how it's designed and made. So I went to archery equipment, called all these archery companies, and quickly the light bulb kind of went off for me of how our business helped manufacturing and fishing and hunting and broadheads and bows and all that stuff. So that's how I got into the business, really out of necessity. Never was going to go to school for chiropractic originally. And then my childhood hero at the time, who was a chiropractor, said, don't do it. Do something else. So I ended up switching in college, going to be a business major while starting with my dad at age 18, right out of high school.
Awesome. So how long were you working in the family business?
So I worked there for 16 years. Yeah. It was, so I started there, as I said, inside sales, and really fell in love with sales. Was very intimidated by it initially, but you realize, I joke that my fishing really set me up for success, because you're out on these boats. It's not like you're casting, you're setting lines and you're trolling. And if the fishing's hot, great, you're always busy. But a lot of times you go through these lulls of sometimes all day or sometimes several hours. And you have to be a good entertainer. You have to be a good listener. They're asking you questions about the lake, and you're telling stories, and you're listening to them. And there'd be people who were, I remember being like 12 years old and listening to this guy. He gets a phone call. He says, "No, I will not give him that $250,000 raise. Are you kidding me?" And I'm like, what? So I'm dealing with those people, but I'm also dealing with people who've been saving up for 5 years for this fishing trip and everything in between.
Yeah.
Men, women, children, all walks of life. And I just had to learn to enjoy people and to communicate and to be a good listener, because I never said I was a great, smooth salesperson, but I love people, and I genuinely love hearing people and being part of their story. So
Yeah. And I mean, sales is very relatable
Yeah.
as far as fishing and putting baits in the water. And sometimes you catch fish, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you hook them and miss them. You know what I mean? It's, there's some similarities to it that Keegan won't understand that either. He's a big fisherman.
Whatever. No, oh my gosh, I catch sunnies like it's nobody's business. Now the big old marlins maybe
Right.
need some lessons on, but
So your brother was working in the business with you guys as well?
Yeah, so I'm the youngest of three. So my dad started, my brother was 5 years older than me, started in the business before I was there. And then I have a middle brother that joined the business about the last 3 years that we were in business. So yeah, interesting dynamic, for sure. Family businesses. As I said, he got into it earlier than I did. And I think he wanted to, because it was something he could do with our dad. And I never had an interest in it. And then one day I did, sort of out of necessity. So that was, it was an interesting transition, because I started inside sales. He was, I think, in management at that time, and had been in there for several years, had, gained credibility with the employees. And I'm just, the thing I enjoyed was, our parents were really good that they weren't handing us things. The one thing I can say is my dad gave me a job that I probably didn't deserve in inside sales, but it was inside sales. They handed me a stack of business cards and say, call them. And it's like, so it wasn't, handing us these jobs we didn't deserve. And really the way I got into the positions that I did in management and executive leadership and then ownership was because they put me in a position and I excelled in that position. So I'll never forget one of the things that changed my career. And that's the amazing thing about, you don't realize every interaction, the little trainings, the little bit of information that you listen to, how it can just impact your career like that. They handed me that stack of business cards, and I was so defeated that I just couldn't get anybody to take a meeting with me. I was trying to book a meeting for a senior level guy to go in and close the deal. And this guy came in and said, think of it like a letter. You have your opening, your body, and your closing. Like, where are you losing people? Is it near in the middle where you're just talking too much, or is it at the end? And for me, it was at the end. And so I share that because it was a transforming for me. In one day, my career changed, because I would do really good getting through the body, and then I'd say, well, would you maybe sort of want to get together next week Tuesday, or no? Yeah. And they're like, no, we're good.
Yeah.
And he's like, one minor tweak, and I think that's, life it's all about changing. Small increments can have really big impact. And I just said, hey, based on everything I hear, sounds like it's worth 15 minutes of your time and my time to get together. How's next Tuesday sound? That one tweak catapulted my career. So I excelled in inside sales and got into outside sales. And really, it was all about people. But my brother had been in leadership for a while before I got in there. So we started getting to the point where he was in sales management and I was an up-and-coming salesperson. My natural progression was sales. So pretty quickly we found some conflict. We're 5 years different in age, so we weren't in high school together. It was just like we're always missing each other. So my relationship with my brother was mostly based on work. And I kind of was the kind of person where if you're in my way, like, get out, because I'm going to take you down. I don't care if you're my brother. I don't care who you are. If there's something that I wanted to achieve and you were in the way of it, I was going to get what I wanted. So I recognize, looking back, in the moment, I probably didn't realize it, but our relationship got strained, pretty early he ended up moving out of that position. We had a coach at the time that was kind of helping us kind of figure out where we should go. And I ended up taking that role of sales leadership, and he took an operational role. But I think, it wasn't handled the best way. There wasn't great communication. We weren't having those courageous, difficult conversations to say, here's why we're doing what we're doing. A lot of it was just, we did it and then hope for the best. So, yeah, there certainly was a lot of friction. And then, you get wives and kids in the mix, and you get your work-life balance, and everybody has different opinions of what work should look like. I was a workaholic. I was a terrible student growing up. Like, my parents were always...
Be a common theme on the
my parents. My parents were like, you can't do this. I just remember, you can't do this in high school. And then I was like, I did it in high school, and you can't do this in college. And I remember actually, because I was working full time during college, I became very successful at like 19 years old. I was a top sales rep in the region, but one of the top 20 in the nation out of several thousand sales reps, and I was going to school. But they were just like, you can't do this, because I was just a terrible student. But something switched in me when I got into business, and I am a competitor, that it was just, I became an absolute workaholic, like, immediately. I couldn't stop because there was always something to do. There was always more to do. I would think of, my competitors are sleeping. The CEO is probably working, so I'm going to be sending them proposals tonight so they know that I'm going to go above and beyond. So it was just, I had that work ethic, and I expected everybody else to have that work ethic too. And I think I expected that from my brother, which just created a lot of friction. And he was further along in his family and his marriage than I was at the time. So yeah, pretty early on, there were some good times, but pretty early on, there was a lot of friction in our family. And, my dad wasn't the most courageous at having those conversations. So sometimes I would just do it, and I would assert myself in places that I shouldn't have.
What ultimately led you guys to sell the business?
Yeah. So we, so this kind of continued to evolve, and, as we were continuing to grow as a business, I'm never satisfied. Probably one of my strengths, probably one of my greatest weaknesses. I'm never satisfied. So I'm always wanting that next level. I'm always wanting to push forward, and not everybody wanted that. My dad, a lot of times when people start a business out of necessity, they don't have this vision for what they want to achieve. So probably where we were far outshined anything he ever planned to do. And so I don't think he had this vision for it, and probably my brother was content, and I'm looking at our competitors that used to be our same size. So there was kind of a group when my dad started that were in their 30s to 50s, and they started to age out. And so when that happened, they started to sell to private equity. So they used to be that 10 to 30 million family business. Now they're 100 million, and they're 200 million, and there's 300 million, and then they're 500 million. So we're seeing this market change, and I'm getting frustrated. I feel like we as a small business are taking it on the chin, and it's like we have to do something different. The market was changing, and kind of the family dynamic at the same time. I had the other brother, my middle brother, come in at the same time as well during this, and it just kind of, we couldn't make good decisions. We weren't casting vision. We weren't planning our succession and roles and responsibility. And that's a lot of the issues that my brother and I had, was because we didn't really have that clear designation of who does what and who has this authority and who has that. So I'd say it was really a combination of the market, our family, knowing that we needed to make a big move. Either we needed to buy somebody and jump from that little small family business, and we just didn't have the cash to do it. And it had gotten to the point where I loved the business. It was my life, but it was almost too late to really take it to where I would want it to go. And I'm like, I don't think me and my brother are going to be able to figure this out together. We just have differing, if we're 50-50 owners, it's just going to be a challenge. So we just, I was one of the first, we didn't agree on a lot of things, my brothers and I, but we did agree that selling was the right thing to do. So my brothers and I were on board, and my parents really weren't ready to sell. It was his baby. He started it from nothing. The days that we were digging for remember the McDonald's placemats? They used to have coupons. Like, we used to go digging for the coupons for like dinner, and that's when they started this business to now, a very successful, very profitable 80-person business, and he had built that from the ground up. I think he would say, things like it was the Lord's and, it's just business. But you say that, but when you've done the same thing and you've gone to the same place and you've been with the same people for 30-some years, it becomes part of you. So I think the realization of them letting go of that became really challenging. But yeah, eventually they came around and said, I think we should sell the business. So that was around 2020.
And how did that transition go?
Yeah. Oh, could have gone a lot better. There's so many things in thinking about succession planning, even our taxation. We were C Corp. So you're looking at things like double taxation, and, we had been in a heavy investment stage. This wasn't a thing like, okay, in 2020, we're going to sell the business, and we had that conversation in 2015. This is like almost like a volcano building waiting to erupt, and then eventually we say, okay, now is the right time. But we hadn't planned. Our EBITDA wasn't like optimized. We'd been hiring. We've been adding investments. Not a great thing to do if you're going to sell your business, trying to maximize the value. So there's a business, a commercial aspect of it, but then there's the people. Like, do we have the team set up for success? Because no one wants to come in and clean up your mess. Like, they want to buy something that works. And I think they could pretty quickly see that, in having meetings with the family. So we looked at competitors, and we looked at private equity. And, my dad really struggled with the idea of selling it to somebody that, he built this thing. I want it. And I did too. This is part of all of us. It's like, how do we see somebody take what we built and build onto it? Or private equity, and nothing against private equity. They just, in our industry specifically, what they do is they'd buy the business. They'd strip out a lot of excess people, optimize it for 3 years, then turn around and sell it. And it just didn't jive with our family. It was like all customer service, and whatever it takes, we're going to serve the customer. That's not really how they operated. So he struggled with that. Selling it to a competitor, same thing. They're going to buy us, our legacy's gone, and they'll just be part of a bigger entity. So we ended up finding a partner of ours that was in a perpendicular, adjacent industry, and they sold CNC equipment. We sold the software. So it really was this nice marriage of kind of start to finish, soup to nuts. We can take a customer through the journey of a part in manufacturing, from software to manufacturing equipment to quality, robotics, you name it. So that's who we ended up kind of locking in on and selling to. But I think pretty quickly as you get in this dating process, they start looking at your books, they start looking at your people. And I think they could see that we didn't have everything perfectly optimized, that we really weren't ready to sell. Our family and the relationships had already been damaged. But I think when we got to that point, you start talking salaries and roles and responsibilities and how much you want to sell the business for. That tension only got worse. It didn't really relieve it. It sort of exponentially compounded it, if you will. So we ended up kind of getting a letter of intent and going through it. And, at some point I had a conversation. I don't know if I shared this with my dad or my brother. So if they hear this, they'll hear it for the first time. But it really put me in a difficult position because the buyer really wanted our business, They were willing to pay us what we wanted for the business, but they did not want my dad to stay on. They didn't want my brother to stay on, but they required me to stay on. So, I think my dad had made peace with selling the business, but had thought, well, somebody else will carry the book, but I'll still be part of it as an advisor or the president, but under a new owner, which is pretty typical. But I ended up not getting asked to stay on, and I did. I was sort of required to. And so I think that kind of was the nail in the coffin, with some strained relationships that my brother and I had, and my dad just feeling a little bit betrayed. And I didn't really want to make the transition. I felt the Lord kind of calling me to the ministry that we have and the work that we're doing here in the Driftless Coulee region. I'd moved in 2020 to this area, kind of during the sales process. And so that was hard. But at the same time, I was excited. I felt like sometimes my family was a barrier to my goals and dreams, and we didn't have the money. We were profitable. You don't have 10 million cash to just buy a business or to invest in people or equipment. And now I did. The business that bought us was a $450 million company. And then they were ultimately owned by a $110 billion Japanese holding firm that owns Penske Truck and Toyota Canada. I mean, the major companies. They can buy anybody they want. So I was really excited and like, I'm going to get to do this thing. Probably had more authority, more control than I did even in the family business. But quickly realized, just the politics and the things that had to do to be an executive in that size organization. So I spent 1 year kind of doing my same role with the parent company, and then a year after that as an advisor, really kind of working more closely with Japan, figuring out how do we turn was our $30 million business, then a $450 million business into a $1 billion business. So I'm excited. And, I just went through this season. I remember sitting in a board meeting, talking to a bunch of guys in suits, and I got hit with this pressure and this fear like I'd never had before. I'm always been very confident, could talk to anybody. I don't care who you are. You could be the president and I shake your hand, look you in the eye. But all of a sudden, I had no confidence. And I just had this fear and anxiety and things that came over me. And that kind of started this spiral process of what I would call a mental breakdown. I didn't know it at the time. I thought I was dying or having a heart attack or something physical was going on. But I think what I didn't realize is I have a damaged relationship with my brother, who I care deeply about. The business that I planned to run for the rest of my life, we just sold. My dad feels betrayed by me because I chose the new business over the family. And now I find myself in a room of a bunch of Japanese folks, and I realize that if I say one wrong word, people lose their jobs. I lose my job. There's just so much. It felt like the security blanket that we'd had was gone, and I just couldn't handle it. I'd been very good at numbing. Since then, the Lord's really shown me everything was so transactional for me. It was just, everything was transactional. And I just felt like he sent me into this season of I'm not going to allow you to not feel anymore. And once I started to feel these things that I'd never felt before, I couldn't handle it. And it was too much for a person to bear. So I ended up taking about 60 days sabbatical and just really seeking the Lord and just trying to figure out what's going on. And I just remember taking a walk in the woods with the Lord, and he said, I gave you exactly what you asked for. and that was a smooth transition. I wanted to do this. I wanted to go out on top. I wanted to say, look at what I did. Look at me. Okay, now Austin, now Keegan, now you take the reins, now that I set you up for success. But it didn't happen that way. It was not my timing and not my way. It was sort of forced upon me. I had to hand my role over to his successor, and I watched him get praised by the executives for all the great work he's doing. And I'm like, You think he did that? He's worked here, like, he's been in the job for 2 weeks. And I started to realize, like, all the pride that I had inside of me, like, it just couldn't handle the fact that, like, the business was going on without me. I told him, I'm going away. I need 60 days to just disappear and just process. And they were supportive, but at the same time, the business went on without me. And I realized I wasn't as important as I thought I was. And that really cut me deep. But I had drawn a picture. If you think of a rectangle and you draw from the top left to the bottom right corner, it makes 2 triangles in a rectangle. I said, this is me at work. I'm going to start out 100%, but pretty quickly I want to start transitioning into other things that I want to do in my life and ministry and things like this. And they were supportive of that, but I think they thought he's going to fall in love. He's going to enjoy this. He's going to climb the corporate ladder. And so that's when I say I was walking through the woods and the Lord's like, I gave you exactly what you wanted. I found myself still in an executive role, probably in a higher role, making the same amount of money for doing way less work. And but I'm like, Lord, this isn't how it was supposed to go. I was supposed to go out on top, not humiliated and embarrassed. I mean, my confidence was, I attribute it to like a plant, right? Being pruned. I felt like I was that plant that was cut down to like you barely could see it above the soil. It was the most humiliating, embarrassing season. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it showed me how misaligned my priorities were in life. And I needed that wake-up call.
That's amazing. That's crazy how God just in one moment like that can, for some people, like that happens over a gradual time, but like for some people it's just made so clear in one moment, and sounds like it kind of was for you, at least in a shorter season. So that's amazing. Yeah, that's an amazing story. Tell us more about, so you guys, while this was happening, you had moved to Gaze Mills, bought your property there, and I believe the deer story aligns somewhere in this season.
Yeah.
So tell us the deer story for the hunters in the audience.
Yeah. So
how that kind of plays, how God used hunting and bow hunting and a passion that you had to make you realize some things in this season. Yeah,
the Lord is amazing at using where we're at. He uses our hobbies to speak to us. So this mental breakdown sabbatical season happened to line up with deer season. Thankfully.
Wasn't planned that way? Or?
I don't think so. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I might have extended it a little bit. I don't remember. But I thought, you know what? I couldn't like talk to people. It's the weirdest thing, like social anxiety. It was just, I felt like I was going to pass out anytime I interacted with people. It was, I don't even, if there's somebody that's felt it, they know what I'm talking about, but I couldn't put words to how I felt. So I wanted to be alone. And I thought, well, this is my year. I'm just going to sit in a deer stand. I got an excuse. I'm not working. Kids are at school. I'm just going to go, this is my year. I'm just going to sit in a deer stand, process with the Lord. I'm going to kill a giant. And sure enough, I had a really big deer on camera that showed up. And so I'm like, I'm going to hunt him. I'm going to hunt him hard, and I'm going to get him. And I had wrote on my arrow, you know, if you picture an arrow, Keegan knows what I'm talking about, the fletchings on the arrow. Do you use the little ones or the old school bigger ones?
I try to do like old school.
Yeah, I figured
dirty feathers.
I figured you're a feather guy.
I like the fletchings are cool. They're
Whisker biscuit.
Not so much that one. I use the other stuff.
But I had written on my arrow, I don't remember where I came up with this idea, but the idea to release, you know, you think of shooting an arrow, you're releasing an arrow. And I had wrote family on there. I think I wrote pride. I wrote money, you know, obviously leaving your security of a business. And now I live in Gaze Mills. Gaze Mills is one of the poorest cities and one of the poorest counties in the state of Wisconsin. Now I have to, you know, find a way to provide for my family and see the dreams and the visions that the Lord put on our hearts come true. So I was holding on to the finances really tightly. And then I wrote the name of this deer on the arrow. And I'm going to shoot this deer with this arrow. And one morning the Lord said, I just woke up and I just got this sense like, don't go hunting. And it was like 70 degrees in November. I'm like, okay, no big deal. And sure enough, so I got up in the time I would have hunted and I spent time with the Lord, and I have these cellular trail cameras, and it sent me a text, and it was like the deer was standing in front of my tree stand that I've been hunting all season, like when I should have been there. And so I just strived and strived. It was like I couldn't connect with that deer. And then, so I hunted the next morning, and sure enough, same time comes in, and my brain went a little bit to marbles and got excited, saw a big rack, and I shot the deer, and come to find out it wasn't the deer I was after. So here I shot the wrong deer with that arrow. But I had wrote in my journal that season that the Lord was saying, do you trust me? When you release things to me, I'm going to give you the desires of your heart, but you have to be willing to release. And I wasn't, truthfully. I wasn't ready. I thought I was. I wasn't ready to release things in my life, the pride and that I think was identified, but maybe not dealt with. So I shoot a really nice buck and I'm kind of like, what in the world? I thought I was, and I felt like I heard the Lord say, you're going to get the deer. You're going to get the deer. And then I just shot the wrong deer. I'm like, well, maybe I'll get him with a gun. Sure enough, again, I can't kill the deer. Everything, I see him and I can't shoot him. So fast forward, I missed the opportunity at that buck. And then 2023 rolls around, and now I'm back at work in a new role. I'm leading their growth and strategy, head of acquisitions, buying companies. So now I didn't have this much time to hunt. I'm like, great, and then we had family things and our ministries ramping up at the same time. So I'm like, so the year I have time to hunt, I can't kill them, and now I have no time. And I get a little, I shared it before, but I'm a little competitive. I like the best. I want to be the biggest, and, business and hunting's no different. I want the biggest buck so I can brag. Look how good I am. Look at me. And the Lord's been really revealing that to me, over the last couple of years of just the pride. I wouldn't say I was super arrogant outwardly, but inside he was showing me how much pride I had. It's just sick, way more than I realized. And so fast forward, we have all these things. We can't hunt, and I'm stressing out. And I'm sitting in a board meeting at work, and, they had changed my role to the point where I wasn't traveling a whole ton. I didn't have day-to-day employees. It was a pretty good gig for the amount of money that I was making. But I sat in a board meeting, and we went around and we all agreed, this is the right decision. And then this is pre-board meeting, and we get to the board meeting, and our CEO does the exact opposite thing. And I said, I can't do this. I just can't. It was stealing my joy. I had this emotional attachment still to the business, and everything was I just wasn't being a good dad. I wasn't being a good husband. I'm just I have to be done. And I didn't have the next thing planned. It's not ideal to quit your job and not have something else lined up, or at least have an idea. But I quit my job. I called the president and just said, hey, it's time to be done. So that was October 26th. And I'll never forget it. So I called him. I called my brother, actually, and just said, hey, here's what happened. I left my job. And I text my wife, and I said, hey, can I go hunting? I love the process. That's where I go. In the woods, that's where I go to be with the Lord and process. And she's like, I'm visiting friends. I'm not going to be home. Actually, can you get the kids? So I got to go get the kids. I can't go hunting. And I'm like, no big deal. It's okay. It's hot anyways. And so I'm calling my brother on the phone, and I look out the window, and there's the buck I've been after.
Outside the house. Outside
the house, between my kids' trampoline and our septic system. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I run and get the bow in the garage. I throw my release. I'm wearing a maroon sweater and Dockers. And I go out on the deck, and sure enough, there he is. And I let him go one time. A friend of mine had given me this word for just life in general, but she said, don't rush the process. And that came back to me as I was drawing on this deer, because I was like, oh, I'm rushing. If I shoot, I'm just kind of closing my eyes and hoping for the best. So I let him go, and I'm like, I can't believe that just happened. And sure enough, he comes back, and I shoot him off my back deck, and my kids are watching, and they're like, Dad, he just dropped. Like, we saw him. And I'm like, no way, I think I missed. And sure enough, I shot a 190-inch Boone and Crockett whitetail off my porch, and it wasn't until after that I was reminded of that journal entry from the year prior. And I read it, and I'm like bawling. It's like, when you release to me like the desires of your heart, I'll give you exactly what you asked for. And I think so often, like, we're holding on to these things, and he's just like, I just want to know that you're willing to give it to me if I ask you for it. And so I released it, and literally within an hour, I'm shooting the buck of a lifetime off my porch. And the best thing about it was, a year prior, when I wanted to kill it, I would have been like, look at me, Josh, mighty deer hunter. But the Lord did it in a way that I can't even tell you. Keegan, mighty deer hunter over here, like, if he was at my house, could have grabbed my bow and shot a 190-inch whitetail off my deck. There was nothing I did, strategy or scent control, like, and I just remember, like, being at the deer just weeping of like, you gave me what I wanted, but you did it in a way that I can't take credit for it. So it was just really like this beautiful story of like the business and hunting coming together, and just, I was so proud of the deer, but not for the reasons I would have been a year ago. I was so proud because it's just like, when you release things to the Lord, like, he loves to bless his children. He does. Like, he cares about this stuff. He designed those animals for our pleasure. And so he loves to bless us, but it can't be before him. And there's so many things that I put before him for my life. It's business, hunting, all these things that just consumed my thoughts. And it's like, I heard somebody say, I think it was Stephanie Gretzinger, she's like, what you think about, like, when you're not at church and you're not in worship, but like what consumes your thoughts is what you worship. And like, man, I worship a lot of things more than I do the Lord. And hunting's one of them. So that's my story.
That's an amazing
His name was Spidey.
Yeah. Keegan put a picture of him up on the video.
Yeah, you'll have to send me, and I'll be cool.
Absolutely massive buck, but we've talked about the story of me killing my moose, and it's like, it's very, very similar to that. And there is no better feeling than when, like, sometimes when, like, oh, is that God? Like, was God speaking to me, or does he really want me to do this? And you kind of question things, or is this me, or is this God? But like, there's other times, man, he just smacks you right in the face. You're like, it is obvious. Like, there's no other way that could happen. Like,
No.
that it's not possible to shoot him off your deck. Like,
It's unheard of.
you hunt him for 2 years and all over the property, and he shows up there when you're not supposed to, like, it obviously. Any unbeliever, like, I have several stories similar to that I share with people, and it's like, it's not possible. Yeah. It's not humanly possible. So that's an awesome story. Thank you for sharing that. It's so cool how that aligns with business. And
Yeah. I think that's just what I want to ask questions just off of that, but I think that's sometimes I want you just to dive in a little bit more on, because when you say like release things, I think Christians or maybe unbelievers in general hear the phrase, well, God just wants to bless us. And so we always think, okay, then he's going to, like you said, he does, there's nuance to it, right? God does want to give me the desires of my heart. Well, when they're in false things, or I think that I'm, like, we all have blind spots. I think I'm doing really well in serving the Lord, so he must want me to have this thing. His ways are always better. And at the end of the day, I always just say, like, the whole reward, the whole goal of life, Jesus is the reward.
Yeah, good.
It's way better when he gives you the desires of your heart, but what he wants to give you is himself. Like, ultimately, like, yes, he blesses us sometimes financially and with other things, but when all of a sudden he changes our heart and our desires revolve more around him, and he gives us the desires of our heart now, then it changes everything. So for you, like, what were, just like more in detail, like the ways that you saw, man, I thought I was like, right, I thought my heart was pointed due north, but maybe it wasn't, if that makes sense. Like, what were some of those things you had to really let go of?
Yeah, I think, man, there's a lot of things that come to mind. I think just seeing seeing the business kind of continue and not be getting the accolades anymore, it's just like, oh, that really hurts. I just kept getting these things that really hurts. And I didn't think that would hurt, but it does. And just started to realize that, like, even how I was viewing my family, like, there's times, like, I legitimately, I had this early in my career where there was a guy that used to work for us that went to a competitor. I actually got his job. That's I moved into outside sales. And I made it a goal in life to get that guy to lose his job. And I did. And I rejoiced. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like, he's got a wife and kids and a family, and I probably did the same thing with my brother too. There was times where it's just like, I don't care. Like, and it's just like he started to show me these things in my heart. And it was just like, I can't believe how incredibly wicked, like, I am. Like, and I've been a Christian my whole life. I don't remember where in the process I became an ordained minister. So it's just like, I'm a good guy. Like, I'm a really good guy. I'm a good Christian. People like me. And then it's just like, oh my gosh, my heart is so wicked. And he started to show me that. And probably the biggest, it was around that same time frame I actually went to this conference, and it was super convicting for me. And I think this applies to business or ministry, but this pastor was saying, picture being in heaven and seeing, 1 million people lined up because of your ministry. Like, look at your ministry. And they're there because of you, because of the work you did here on earth. But then you look around and your kids aren't there. And they're not there because you chose other things. You sacrificed your kids on the altar of business, on the altar of ministry. And that was just like that was one of those life-altering moments when you hear something that just pierces your heart. And I realized, wow, that had been done to me as a kid, and I'm doing it to my kids. And it just really changed my perspective on everything, and started to realize, like, the things I've prioritized with my family, with my kids, with my brother, like, all these things that I thought matter don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our life is but a vapor. We're gone in a second, which isn't to not work hard and strive for things, but there's just a balance to everything. And same thing with Jesus. And so, can you talk about ways that you saw, or maybe that the Lord has redeemed now? Just because pride is, you talked about the church at the beginning. Pride is just an insidious, wicked sin, but also so hard to detect sometimes because we're always walking on this fine line, right? And I had a similar thing where the Lord had to kick me my teeth for a while. I'm slow and dumb, so it just kind of God knows me. But then I looked back at that season, right, and it was a really dark, tough season for me, right? And you're asking, well, why? What did I do? And then all of a sudden you come out of it, and it's that same thing. Wow, thank you for showing me how sinful and wicked I had become, because my passion is to serve Him and teach and tell people about the Lord. Like, that's my heart. Jesus is my heart. But I'd found along the path of, I loved Jesus, got saved radically at 19. I had no full-time job or whatever, so I'm spending 5-6 hours a day I love Jesus, just focusing on Jesus. So, just doing and serving, not out of like, oh man, I want to be something, just like, I'm just so filled up right now. If I don't go do something, I think I might physically explode. So, I'm just doing stuff, and then they're kind of like growing, and people are coming to it. People are kind of getting like wrecked. People are getting saved through it. And then you're like, wow, but all of it happened. Why? Not because of me, because I'm just focused on Jesus, and I just said, whatever you want me to do, I'll do. Yeah. And I was doing it. Well, then all of a sudden, right, I'm a brand new believer, a couple years in, all of a sudden you're like, this is kind of cool.
Look at me.
My eyes start to just slowly shift off the Lord. Yeah. And then it's all these baby steps away from it to all of a sudden recognizing I'm serving Jesus, but through my own lens now, because I've become the thing that I think is cool. And I know that if the Lord wouldn't have, it was His grace, because my prayer in life is, right, I want to be more like Jesus. Sometimes we just don't like the answer to prayer. The answer to prayer is sometimes knocking me down, and he's saying, because I'm that's the answer to prayer. Oh, I want to be more patient. Okay, well then you're going to get stuck behind a train. What the heck? I'm going to be late to work. Oh, we sometimes don't like the real life application of the answer to our prayer. And that was the answer to my prayer, because had I not had that happen, there was this fine line of this blind spot I didn't see, where I would have served people only in as far as if I serve them, they give me the platform to stand up and be cool. And Jesus, now the ministry, business isn't the vehicle. Jesus becomes the vehicle, not the prize. But it's subtle, and it's wicked, and pride. I mean, you're seeing pastors and stuff fall. It's just this ego thing. So for you, what are some of the things the Lord, you don't even have to talk about like the bad stuff, but like some of the things that the Lord has taught you and shown you to, like relieve you of that, to fixate your eyes back on Him and get you out of that rut?
Yeah, no, I think sometimes we think the Lord needs us to do things on His behalf. He doesn't. Like, we're made to worship first and foremost. Like, I remember that I was on an airplane somewhere, and He's like, I don't want anything from you until I have all of you. I think we feel like it's our Christian duty to go out and do all these things and witness and hear my heart. Like, those are, I'm all for evangelism, all for like, meeting the needs of people and witnessing. But like our first mandate is to love Him and to worship Him like wholeheartedly. And if we're not doing that, but like we're doing all these things for Him, or we think we're doing it for Him, we're really doing it for us. And we say we're doing it for Him, but it's really like, meanwhile, like building our ego. And I realized for me, that was like a big part of it. I'm like doing all these really good things, and I'm feeling really good. I'm doing it in the name of the Lord, and even my business. It's like, that's probably one of the biggest regrets I have, is just realizing the mission field we had in the area of business, and we didn't capitalize on it. And sometimes I'm hard on myself, and we just were inconsistent. I was inconsistent. Some days it was like I'm praying with somebody, and other days I'm like, get out of my way. There was very much like two of me, and He started to reveal that. But it's just, what an amazing opportunity that we have to worship Him in what we do. Like, if you're a teacher, if you're a real estate agent, if you're a business guy, whatever you are, like, that is a form of worship, and just bringing Him into that. What an amazing opportunity we have.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, so you're doing business coaching now?
Yeah.
And you mentioned at the beginning that God has gifted you with a good business mind, and business, and that, talk about a fine line, and like, business isn't inherently a bad thing. Making money isn't inherently a bad thing. Like, wanting and having a desire to grow a business, like, isn't inherently a bad thing. So for people that you coach, and like, for people like myself, how do you, like, where's the line? Like, where's the line between wanting that and knowing that God's gifted you with these talents to go and do these things, but like, where's the line in taking it too far?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think for me, I recognize in this season of transition that it was like there was business Josh and there's Christian Josh, and often they didn't mix. And again, maybe not super blatantly obvious, but in my heart, when the Lord started revealing things to me, I'm like, no, there is a separation. I'm not saying, Holy Spirit, give me wisdom. Should I hire this person? Give me strategy. It was just, He was with me the whole time, and that's where we think it's us. I'm really not that good. I'm not that good at anything. It's only Christ in me that I can do anything. But now it's, we say the formula for success in what we teach our clients right now, and this is a principle I would have had in my earlier career, it would have changed my life. But we say the formula for success in life is B times do equals have.
Say it again.
B, letter B-E, times do equals have. I was really good at doing. I was really good at selling, at running a business, at finding ways to make money, being really creative. But if you look at that formula, that's incomplete. The being part of like, who are you becoming as a leader, as a father, as a husband along the way? I look at that, and I know the Lord's redeeming it because now I'm helping people not make the mistakes I did. But I look back at like, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful I'm still married. I'm so thankful my kids still want to be around me because I wasn't there. I would be gone before my kids woke up in the morning, and I would come back either after they were sleeping or in that hour of like, she's ready to pull her hair out and like, here, take them. And I'm like, all I got to do today was spank my kids. And, then I would go back to work more. And I wish I could watch myself in that time, but I do know like I was not a very good leader. I wasn't a very good brother. I wasn't a very good son. I wasn't a good husband. It was just, I was so focused on success that I lost track of everything. So now what I tell clients is, you want to build a great business, you want to be a multi-million, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, well, there's nothing wrong with wealth. It's the love of it that is the root of evil, but money is not the root of all evil. And we can do amazing things with money, but there's people that say, I want to be a millionaire. That's great. Like, let's get you there. But if you sacrifice your kids and your wife in the process, now you have a business that's worth millions of dollars, and you have all the time and freedom to go do whatever you want, but you have no one to do it with. So that's where the B times do equals have. I recognize for me, like, sometimes like the business side is easy, but it's the communication, it's the leadership, it's the small things of like, how is Josh maturing and progressing as a professional, as a husband, as a father, as a leader? And so that's, nothing wrong with running a great business. We're all about that, making people extremely profitable. But what I'm super passionate about is don't sacrifice all the people in your life and the things in your life and your relationship with the Lord, because that's what matters. Because in the end, money alone, there's a lot of lonely, very successful people out there with tons of money and no one to spend it with, and they're depressed.
Reminds me of like Paul. If you want to ask your heart what it is, like, do you think by getting to the million that's where your contentment's going to be? Is your heart going to be content in it? Because Paul was, I'm content in all circumstances. I know what it's like to have much, and I know what it's like to have nothing.
That's good.
He's like, I'm good in both. Which means he did, like, there were seasons where he was good. He was provided for.
Yep.
Great. And he's like, I'm content. Then he has nothing. I'm good. Right? Like, I think the longer you're walking with the Lord, sometimes we know the Christian answers and no, I'm doing this because of this. And it's like, is that really what your heart's done? Like, would you fall apart if it went away? If you're like, yeah, I would be a mess. Well, you probably have an identity issue.
Right. Absolutely.
So,
what are some things that maybe some words of encouragement for people in a family business, some learning lessons, things that they should avoid or things that they should focus on doing as far as being in the family business?
Yeah. Had a conversation just last night with a guy. He's in his mid-50s, has kids in the business, nephews in the business, and I'm just asking him, like, what's your plan? Well, we'll just got to wait and see, and do they have the same work ethic? Not really. It's like you talk to somebody, you say, is marriage easy? And they say, oh, marriage is super easy. I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, it's not. I don't care who you are. I don't care how good your marriage is. It's challenging because we're people and we're different. And we have communication style differences and we've been raised differently. And there's all these things that get in the way of perfect relationship and perfect communication. And so my advice to people in family, I love family businesses. I don't know if we made a mistake in selling it, but I look back and I see the work and the legacy my dad built and the time that I spent, and I see the culture's different. The things we used to value, they don't value anymore. It's sad to me a little bit to see like our customers that used to love us saying, yeah, they're not, that support's not, and they're a good company. It's just different. And their value systems are different than a family business. So I love family businesses, but they have to be done right. You have to be super proactive. So to say we're just going to let it work out, it's a bad idea. It's a recipe for disaster. Let me tell you, like, having been in it, you have to start leaning into those uncomfortable conversations, setting up clear roles and responsibility. Who has what percentage ownership in the business? Who makes what? Who has what role? When are we going to exit? What does that look like? And separating kind of the family from the business, which you really can't. People say they can, you can't. But yet you still need to have, clear, if somebody works more and is more capable than other, then maybe they should make more, or they should be in this role versus this role. But my advice, it doesn't have to be me, but having a neutral party that can help navigate those conversations is critical, because it not only affects the people, but when people are buying your business, they value the business based on the leadership and how well it runs too. So it's not just the relationships and maintaining relationships in itself is super valuable, but it actually is, in some cases, a multi-million-dollar thing when they see a dysfunctional family that doesn't have their stuff together and then looking to sell their business. But I would always love to see family business either pass on to the next generation or pass to somebody else, but has the same values and principles, and see those handoffs be done super smooth. Because you see the statistics of family business, I think something like 10 to 13 in the second generation, and the third generation drops down to like less than 3%.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Families are tough, man. I mean, we all, depend. I don't care what your background is. Family is difficult, and
part of it's because like that third generation, like the second generation saw their parents build it and start it and do it, and the work ethic that they had, third generation's pretty much removed from it, and they're just kind of being handed something that they didn't work for.
Yeah, and if they didn't teach leadership skills, building a business, my dad's very entrepreneurial. Being an entrepreneur and being a CEO of an 80-person company is a very different role. Yeah. So you need to make sure, are you developing that next family? Because now let's just bootstrap it and get it done no longer works. You need processes and procedure and leadership outside the family. And if you don't know how to do that, it's a recipe for disaster. And the dad and grandpa being able to do it just doesn't work anymore. And I'm sure you see it in real estate. You look at these beautiful pieces of land that are up for sale. A lot of times it's because family can't get along, or, multiple owners. So anytime you get into a family-owned business or multiple owners, they should have somebody holding them accountable to kind of be a neutral ground to kind of help bring it back and just say, hey, I know this doesn't feel like a big conversation today, but it will be. So let's start having it now. And that would have been game changer for us. So for me, looking back, there's a lot of things we could say, what if we would have done this differently? But now I have the opportunity. I have some answers and I've done some things well, but a lot of times it's, let me tell you, here's the reasons why you should do this, because I've lived it and I've experienced it, and I don't want to see you go through that.
Yeah. One thing I've always been, not always, but I have been told is what's fair is not always equal.
Yeah.
And I think in regards to the family business, or passing down an inheritance, you think split everything equally. But what if one person did more work than the other, or provides more value to the business than the other? And that's a tough conversation to have in a family business. And in a non-family business, it's pretty easy to say, this dude provides way more value to the business. We're going to pay him more. We're going to give him more ownership. But
right.
When you have siblings, that's a tough conversation to have.
It is. And then you get spouses involved, totally. and all that stuff, and it just gets dicey. And I haven't met a family business that isn't, some run better than others.
Yeah.
But if they say, again, if it's easy, I look at them in the eye and say, you're lying to me. Yeah. It's not easy.
Yeah. Or it is now, but it's not that
right.
sustainable.
There could be something that happens and all of a sudden it's not. Yeah. They're complex, but they can be beautiful because we really did. We served our customers well. I mean, our customers were our friends. And something I love to see is in these small communities, let's say a hardware store sells to a Walmart, right? That's going to change the DNA of a community drastically. And not that there's anything wrong with big box stores or things like that, but there's something beautiful about like the cultures that are built in our communities. I'd love to see like that continue, especially in more of the rural, smaller areas, to see them pass that down, because it's a really beautiful story. Grandpa started it from nothing. I'm working with a customer right now. Just their story is, I mean, they're going to be a very, very well-known brand, but their story goes back to, starting this in the garage when they had nothing. And to see that legacy continue really is beautiful. As long as they have the business training and the communication training along the way, I think family businesses can be a beautiful thing. Privately owned businesses are a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, Josh. I appreciate you coming and sharing your story, and super inspiring and awesome to see what God's been doing in your life. And I'm confident that what he's done to you, our audience will be able to learn from that. So Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the Pay It Forward podcast. If you want to find out more about how you can support the podcast or become a sponsor, please click the link below or visit our website, payitforwardpodcast.com. Again, thank you so much for your support, and we hope that you can find a way this week to pay it forward.